What does it take to build an 80-year legacy in one of America's toughest industries, not just to survive, but to lead, right? Through wars, recessions, tech shifts, industry chaos. This company didn't just adapt, it actually evolved. Today on Legacy Decoded, we are pulling back the curtain on one of the most quietly influential firms in American logistics. This is the story of Truckers Insurance Associates, born during World War II, built by truckers, and still leading the way 8 decades later. Welcome back again to Legacy Decoded, where we explore the values, visions, and bold decisions that leave a mark long after the headlines fade. I'm Calais Poteet, and today's story is about legacy with traction, literally and figuratively. Today, we have a super, super special guest. We have Mr. Kevin Blocker on. And Kevin, I'd love to know for the people that have not heard of you just yet, could you just tell the audience, the supporters and listeners, how you got started in insurance, trucking specifically, and how did this whole thing start for you?
Well, for me personally, most people do not choose to step into insurance,
Mm.
and I'm no exception to that rule. So I obtained a business degree from Purdue University, grew up in Indiana, and needed to find a job. And I was able to respond to an ad in the Des Moines Register back when ads for jobs were in the paper. Started an entry-level job with Truckers Insurance doing customer service and just responding to policy changes and things of that nature. It really came from a place of necessity. I was somewhat familiar with the insurance industry. My brother is an actuary, which he and I vaguely get along when it comes to insurance. And so what I found was that it was underwriting was a great fit for me. It requires a lot of different knowledge, a lot of different skills, and it combined into something where you really feel like you've accomplished something. It's a little bit of law, a little bit of sales, a little bit of creative thinking to try to get the deal done. It requires a little knowledge of the trucking industry. So you combine all that into something where you're really trying to serve the trucking industry well. And so, yeah, it's been a great fit for me. I've been at this for 24 years now. I started back in 2001, and I've been very fortunate to be connected to a great company that's now been in business for 82 years, that started in 1943 in Truckers Insurance Associates. It's been a good run, and I've been very fortunate to be where I am.
I love it, man. Um, could you just walk us through or just share a little bit about your role and how it fits into the bigger picture over at
Sure.
Insurance Associates?
Yeah. So like I said, I started off in entry level position, just doing grunt work, frankly. And in that time that I've been here, you move on to handling renewals, which are taking an account that someone else wrote last year and processing the renewal, making sure that we're still the most competitive with the company that we're representing. At Truckers, we have a number of great contracts. And generally speaking, the right fit for an insurance company remains pretty similar. But sometimes you have to move a trucking company to a different insurance company to continue being the most competitive or the best fit from a coverage standpoint. And so renewals are that key touch point every year where it's your opportunity to adjust with the changes in the trucking company and adjust with the changes in the insurance company to make sure that we've still got the best fit. And so we handled hundreds, if not thousands, of renewals in that role. And then after that, I moved on to writing new policies for trucking companies that we didn't currently write, and definitely wrote thousands of those, from one truck operations to several hundred trucks operating within a fleet. And, there's different challenges that are faced with the small guys versus the big guys, but it still comes down to the same thing, which is finding the best coverage and best pricing fit for the account and trying to continue serving them in whatever capacity they need as they go forward. At this point, I am the COO of Truckers Insurance Associates, so I'm spending a lot of my time overseeing other people doing what I've described. I spend a lot of time, frankly, putting out fires as things go awry in different ways, and still trying to emphasize the service component of that, both service to the trucking companies, service to independent agents that are bringing that business to us, and working with the insurance companies to make sure that we are continuing to innovate those products and innovate how we handle that business. So it really takes it takes all hands to continue being competitive and continue being relevant in the industry to put our best foot forward. And, a lot has changed in that time, but those ideals are still at the forefront: the service and the creativity and the aggressiveness to get the best price and the best coverage on the table for the trucking company.
I love that, man. Sounds like you, and I mean, 1943, you know, TIA has been around for quite some time. So you guys are definitely doing some really great things. When you spoke a little bit about putting out fires, for the listener out there, how do you kind of address, from a leadership standpoint, you know, addressing those specific fires as they arise?
Yeah, well, each fire looks a little bit different. And when I say fires, just for your audience, that could be finding that a coverage was missed. Maybe someone on my team missed a coverage that the trucking company needed, and we need to scramble to try to get that coverage added before a problem arises. It might be an agent that's upset with how something was handled. It might be a trucking company that maybe didn't tell the truth on their application, and we're now scrambling to still provide the coverage even if something was not completely honest up front. And so every fire looks a little bit different, but every fire has to be addressed quickly and honestly and with integrity to make sure that all parties are still being treated fairly along the way. So that's kind of what I'm describing when I say those
Gotcha.
fires. Yeah.
So that's awesome, man. What are some major shifts that you're kind of seeing inside of the trucking industry or just the commercial insurance space?
Yeah, so not earth shattering, but a lot of the shifts come in the form of data.
Right.
So in the 24 years that I've been at this, when I first started, we could underwrite an account, let's say a one truck account, we could underwrite with about 10 or 15 different rating factors. I could frankly do it in my head
Right.
on a small account and probably be accurate on the quote within about $100 of accuracy. Those days are long gone. The rating components are much more complex. There's a lot more data that's getting pulled in on any given risk, between telematic data, between safety data that's available through the FMCSA, SMS alerts and basic scores, out of service percentages, things of that nature, credit-based insurance scoring. All of those factors make it much more complex. And so now, this far into my career, I have no way to predict how well an account is going to fare from a pricing standpoint without plugging it into the rating system and seeing how it comes out. And so that's a challenge on my side. That's not a
Right.
challenge for this audience. That's on the insurance agents and the underwriters to figure out. The telematics are a major factor that's evolved in the industry. Almost every truck that's listening to this podcast probably has a device that is recording hard braking, speed, idle time, various things of that nature. They may have cameras that are facing the driver. They may have cameras that are facing outward. And so that's a lot of data that is available
Yeah.
from an underwriting standpoint. We don't really see that data, but it is data that's being collected by insurance companies to help inform them on what the insurance industry should look like in the coming years. It is fantastic data for a truck fleet to use to coach their drivers and to try to use that to improve their safety performance and to improve their fuel consumption and to improve just a number of factors that are related to their operation. And how the trucking company uses that data is really the key factor there. Just having a telematic device doesn't really accomplish anything unless you use the data that you obtain through that to coach driver behavior, to make changes, to tweak behavior. That's really where the strong trucking companies differentiate themselves from the ones that are just checking a box by buying a device.
Mm.
So that's a key component that's changed in that time. Another major component that has changed dramatically in the time that I've been here is lawyers. And as we all do, we have a love-hate relationship with our lawyers. We like our lawyer, but we hate all the other ones. But if you notice, every major city has multiple billboards out front saying, "Have you been injured in a truck
Correct.
accident?
Yes.
Call us and we'll help you out." Liability claims have just exploded in the
Really.
last 10, 15 years. Claims that previously would have been settled out for maybe $100,000 are now being settled out for multi-million dollar payouts. And this has been a challenge for both trucking companies because they have to pay their deductibles and they have to have those losses on their records, but also for insurance companies. It's
Mm.
extremely difficult for an insurance company to make money writing insurance right now. Industry wide, the trucking insurance market is losing about 10 cents for every dollar of truck insurance that they're selling. So there's perpetually trying to improve their selection, improve the quality of the accounts that they're writing, to try to get that down to zero because they want to be making money on each dollar of trucking insurance rather than losing money on that. And that's kind of where the industry is right now. And that's not good for anybody because that just means the pricing will continue to increase across the board. And as we all know, there's not enough fat on the bone in the books of any trucking company to pay much extra. So it's incumbent upon all of us to find ways to improve the safety, to reduce losses so that we can run a little leaner and avoid those continued increases in insurance costs.
Wow. Yeah, we actually are going to be having um, Mr. Ben. Um, he's an attorney based out of Georgia, and we're going to actually cover that on our next one of our next segments next week. Is you know how the claims, what drivers can do to be a little bit safer to kind of avoid those specifically, man. But that's great. That's great to know. I guess right now with not so much fat on the bone specifically for a lot of trucking companies, where do you feel like, what can trucking companies do right now to potentially make better use of that data and just, you know, have more of a chance when seeking out renewals to have a better
Yeah.
rate?
Well, I think coaching driver behavior is the most important thing they can do. So there's a statistic that several companies, insurance companies, have given me over the years, which is that a new driver, regardless of experience, regardless of what kind of equipment they're driving, is close to twice as likely to have an accident the first year they're employed with a new trucking company. So driver turnover is a major problem regardless of experience. So finding ways to keep drivers, even if they've got maybe a speeding problem or maybe they've had a fender bender, finding ways to coach them to improve them is a much better path forward than to just fire them with the first incident and replace them with somebody else because you're just chasing your tail at that point. Having a tenured driver force in your account is a much better way to reduce losses in the long term. And frankly, it's cheaper too, because you're not spending a lot of money on recruiting drivers, on those initial drug tests, on all the onboarding costs that come into hiring a new driver. So that's a massive component of what could be done with that telematic data. Other components are just looking at what your routes are. Are there other routes that have better outcomes? Maybe you take the county highway on a certain route instead of the interstate. Maybe you load at a different time of day. Now, there's different things that you can that bubbles up from that data that may be helpful to run a more streamlined operation and to reduce your costs. So those are just some things that come to mind. One thing I mentioned that is kind of tangentially related to this that is probably not going to be a popular comment. Driver facing cameras are fantastic. Nobody likes them. I would enjoy them. I don't love having a camera on me to watch as
All right.
as
Working, right?
going along, but they're very helpful for knowing, is that driver dozing off? Is that
Mm-hmm.
driver constantly fiddling with something over here on the dash? Is that driver, doing other behaviors that we really don't want them to be doing?
Mm-hmm.
The results of it are so much more valuable than the
Really
from the drivers
interesting.
that it's worth it. And frankly, once you have that camera in their face for a couple of weeks, they will forget all about it being there and they'll return to whatever behavior they were doing. And you can then address that behavior. But I know that won't be a popular comment, but it's a
I mean,
really
if
cool
it's
thing.
it's if
Um,
it helps.
yeah, if it helps. And of course, the outward facing cameras are fantastic as well. If you're not at fault It's great data for proving that in court and proving that before the claim gets out of hand. And it's also helpful if you are at fault. It helps the
Yeah.
insurance company to know, all right, this is not one to fight. Let's just get this settled and move on, because it will overall reduce the cost rather than trying to fight something forever, assuming that the driver's story is correct, because that camera tells a lot of the story. So, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I think any measure right now would definitely be useful, when it comes to, protecting, the company as a whole and, just everybody else that's affiliated with the company and their positions as well. So,
One thing I think is an important philosophical comment to make is that the trucking insurance company is trying to be your friend in this whole thing. They're not the enemy in this process. When a loss happens, when an accident happens, a lot of trucking companies have the instinct to hide that, or to say, maybe I can handle this myself without reporting it. That's not the right move. Trucking insurance companies, they want to hear about that loss as soon as possible,
right.
preferably by the driver at the scene, same day, same hour that it happens. They want to hear about it. They want to start investigating it. They want to start handling that. The longer you delay on the reporting of that accident, the more likely it is that they won't be able to track down witnesses. The more likely it is that they won't be able to really get the full story of what happened. And frankly, it reflects more poorly on the trucking company than if they had just reported it right away. If it ends up coming to nothing, if it ends up being what we call a closed without pay loss, nobody will care. You reported the loss. They said, oh, yep, nothing came of that. We investigated it. There was nothing there. Nothing was paid out. Nobody's going to even count that as a loss as far as our rating is concerned going forward. So I'd strongly encourage losses to get reported immediately and not to filter those out. You will even find insurance agents that will try to hide them, and that's just the wrong move. So I would encourage you to report those losses directly to the insurance company, bypass the agent if you need to get that reported right away.
And also, I was just curious, because we do have some clients that are, smaller insurance companies. What's typically working well for you guys right now, and what's kind of been the most frustrating?
Yeah. So the frustrating part for us, we've been successful over 82 years. We've had to continue to add new markets. We had one market for the majority of our time in business, which was a good one and still is a good one, Northland Insurance. But we've found that we have to diversify, and we've had to find additional markets. And we're now representing a dozen or more insurance companies to be able to provide the best coverage, the best price, and the best, there's a different fit for each company. So a frustration for me is just finding enough markets that will be able to provide coverage and service to the broadest swath of the trucking insurance, the trucking company industry. So there are still companies that don't fit any of my markets, and that's frustrating to me. I'd like to be able to kick out a quote for every account that comes my way, because everyone deserves a good quote. Everyone deserves good coverage. There are some out there that specialize in really rough risks that don't value safety, or who have had some unfortunate losses. Those companies are few and far between, and they're also, frankly, frequently don't offer the best service. But that's a frustration to look at a lot of trucking companies that I would like to be able to write and not be able to put a quality quote out on there. And I'm sure that's the similar frustration to what a lot of trucking companies face as well. So that's a major frustration. The frustration of just having to continue to offer increased pricing.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to do that. Like I said, losses continue to mount. Every mechanic in the world that does repairs on a truck is getting paid more today than they were 5 years ago. That's just the nature of inflation. Parts have gotten more expensive. Those liability losses have gotten out of hand with the nuclear verdicts. So the industry as a whole is the pricing just continues to climb, and that's unfortunate. And I don't like having to provide those types of quotes. We occasionally will trim our commission to try to keep policies on the books, and that's not something that is a good long-term solution for us either. So It's tough out there, and that's a frustration for us as well. Finding good people to continue to be innovative and put the best quotes and the best service forward is a high priority, and just that can be a challenge as well. So those are the frustrations that are on my desk these days, and it's probably similar to what a lot of other industries are facing and what trucking companies are facing.
Oh, that makes total sense. I appreciate that insight. And it sounds like you're a super database guy. I am as well. What kind of metrics are you guys focused on improving right now?
What are we focused on improving in terms of trucking companies?
Just the metrics
in,
business
in our
wise.
in our in our operation, just improved efficiencies within our operation. We employ about 55 people. We are working in 37 states across the country. We look at 12,000 submissions a year on new policies, and improving our efficiencies of processing those submissions that come in, finding the ones and focusing our efforts on those, and getting good quotes put out, and finding the ones that are not quotable and getting those declined and pushed off rapidly. Those are the some key efficiencies that we need to continue improving on. We're looking at software that will help do that for us, software that will help ingest those submissions more rapidly so that we can put our efforts where we can best do it. Getting good quotes on the table rapidly is really important. Trucking companies, trucking insurance agents, they want to quote as soon as possible. And we, as an underwriting company, it's upon us to do that as rapidly as possible, and to provide good service even if we aren't able to put a quote on the table. So those efficiencies are really what we're focused on right now, in addition to finding additional markets to provide a quote to a higher percentage of the submissions that come in.
Hmm, that's interesting. Have you guys considered implementing any type of AI automation just yet?
Yeah, so that's part of that. As a broad service organization, we work with hundreds of different agents, and some of them are highly professional, highly detailed. They send us submissions in that are perfect and have every piece of information that we would need. We also work with mom and pop shops who send us applications that are handwritten and on something just a step above a napkin with a
Wow.
lot of missing information. And we deal with all in between as well. And rapidly addressing each of those submissions does require an AI component.
Mm.
You have to teach an AI to read an application as well or better than a human might. And sometimes those applications are handwritten and it's hard to do. So yes, there is definitely an AI component to what we're looking at doing at this point.
I love AI. AI is such, I've been on the internet forever. I feel like I got on the internet like in the fourth grade when AOL was still around. So I just love to see new technologies kind of emerging and how we can kind of better utilize them. If there was a couple of other things that you think insurance agents could use AI for, what would that kind of look like?
It's tough to say. There's a lot of implementation of AI that I think still needs to be sussed out in terms of, is this really the way to go? I think we've all been caught on a phone call where we realized the responses were weird and realized it was actually an AI on the other end of the phone. I
Wow.
don't honestly think that's the way to go. I think, this is a relationship business. And when someone makes a phone call to their insurance agency or to their insurance company, they want to talk to a person who knows what they're talking about and can give them the help that they need very rapidly. And I think that's still the best place for a human to be. However, there are times that something could be handled from a tech perspective, that where maybe an AI could respond more rapidly, maybe reporting a claim, maybe sending in claim documents. This is the police report. These are photos from the scene. This is the detail of what happened, where an AI could ingest that information quickly and get that arranged in such a way that the adjuster, when they look at that information, wouldn't have to flip through all kinds of pages to get to what they need. So that's a good use of AI. I'm sure in the trucking industry, the AI finding routes that are going to be competitive and routes that you can make money on is a really important thing. There's no shortage of routes to be found
Hmm.
where you don't make money on them. but
Mm,
that's not going to serve anybody well other than pushing yourself out of business. So I'm sure there's some software available that would an AI solution that would bring out the routes where you can actually bring some profitability and cover the gas a lot better than some of those routes where you're not even covering your expenses.
great. Yeah, I love that. Awesome, man. This has been really interesting. I guess if there was one major challenge right now that you would like to solve, what would that be?
So, the challenge for us as a insurance broker, as an underwriter, will always be providing the best service, the best pricing, the best coverage to our clients. And that's always going to be the case. The challenge as we continue to expand our portfolio is finding the best fit for all of those things. I'm as much of an insurance nerd as anybody, but I can't spend all my time reading insurance documents to try to find the best coverage. So finding those quality companies that we want to work with and trusting that they are going to do what they say they're going to do is a major component of what we do. And we pride ourselves in the contracts that we have. We don't contract with fly-by-night insurance companies. We don't contract with companies that really are not going to pay claims. So that's important for us. And that's a high value for us to have integrity in what we do. It served us well for 82 years, and I think it'll serve us well for the next 50, 60, 80 years. So maintaining that level of integrity is important. But I think the same is true for our underwriting of trucking companies. We have to as much as I would like to write every company that comes my way, we have to remain diligent to serve those insurance companies as well and ask all the hard questions of the trucking company. It looks like you have equipment that doesn't really match what you say you're hauling. We have to
Mm,
investigate that. It looks like all of your drivers are new last month. What's going on there? There's a lot of questions that we have to pose,
hmm.
and it's all there to serve the companies that want to operate with integrity as well and want to be a long-term player. So those are all, I'm sure I'm just repeating myself here, but that's really what this business comes down to. And it's important for us to continue to face those challenges and to continue to innovate to find more efficient ways to do that. There's a lot of there's actually fewer trucking companies out in the world today in America than there were a couple of years ago. There's a shrinkage of companies. There's consolidation that comes into play. That's not good for me, and it's frankly not good for this audience either. So we'd love to see that expansion come back and watch small trucking companies thrive, small owner operators being able to run their own business. It's a great freedom and independence that those little guys have, and we applaud that. So that consolidation isn't always a good thing for us in the industry or for the consumer. So we applaud the little guy, and we want to see more of those operations start up. Yeah, so that's something we would love to see.
Awesome. And if you're in the transportation world and want more than just a policy, right? If you want a partner who's been leading the way since 1943, connect with the team over at Truckers Insurance Associates. Is there any advice before we wrap up? Any advice or anything that you'd want anyone to know at this point?
Yeah, just keep doing what you're doing and do it with integrity and do it with an eye toward long-term success. I have frequently looked at a submission on a trucking company, and the agent tried to spin it as this is a company that values safety. And I'll look at their history, and I'll see they have been with trucking insurance companies that did not offer loss control services, that were the fly-by-night operations. I'll see drivers lists where every driver is new. I'll see drivers that don't have much experience. These are all monikers of companies that are not thinking that they want to be in business in 5 or 10 years. These are indicators that a trucking company is trying to go out of business as quickly as possible. So I would just encourage, as an encouragement, I would just say, what can you do to be relevant long term? And that's by partnering with good insurance agents, by partnering with good insurance companies, but also by partnering with good drivers that are going to stick with you for 10 or 20 years, who may have children that come up that you want to employ someday, who you value them, you celebrate their birthdays, you celebrate their anniversaries. There's a relationship component to all that we do here. And I think that pays dividends in the long term, but it's painful in the short term because it can be costly. But the reality is those small decisions on how you treat people and how you treat your business relationships will yield dividends long term. So that would be my encouragement to any trucking companies, to think long term and where they think they want to be in the coming years, and focus on that goal and stick to your guns, stick to your integrity on getting there.
Love that. Love that. This has been exciting, man. I really appreciate you just hopping on and sharing all of those insights. I didn't know as much about commercial insurance until last year around the same time. So it's always refreshing to kind of get more insights. I think it's a super important part of it, of trucking specifically. So I think the more information we can get around, being safe, driver safety, looking into the behaviors of drivers and what can we do to actually coach them to be safer on the road as well. It's always good to know. So again, yeah, super. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
thanks for having us, and yeah, we're happy to help. And I just yeah, I applaud the audience who is continuing to try to learn and innovate in their operation. I applaud you.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. Well, again, I'm Calais Poteet. This is Legacy Decoded. I love that you guys took the time to kind of, tune in with us. If you're watching live, if you're watching the replay, just put it in the comment section. If you have any questions, insurance questions, feel free to reach out to Mr. Kevin Blocker over at Truckers Association, Insurance Association, excuse me. And until next time, you guys, Fleet Connect family, I'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you.